Is this recording in progress like noise? Is that new? I feel like I never heard that
Yeah,
until the past week or two. It's probably a
yeah,
good thing, honestly.
it's new, so it just alerts people, so that you can't just like covertly be doing it anymore.
Totally, totally.
uh, or I guess you could start it anyway. So, okay, so when I go through a disclosure package, I like to obviously pull it up on my screen. I like to pull up the listing on Redfin just because it's like easy to see the information quickly. And then I use that to take the MLS number and I put that into the MLS. So I have these three things open. So they're quick reference guide for any information that I might want. It's kind of going through disclosures is like going through a huge school report or thesis, and then we need to dissect it so that we can find the answers out to whatever might be relevant to the buyers. As realtors, we have the knowledge more than a general public, so it's important that we, go through it, but we're not supposed to be translating it, and we're not supposed to be speaking outside of the scope of what our professional level of knowledge should be, which is hard to kind of gauge sometimes over time, but you'll get the hang of that. And always refer to experts and additional inspections and things when you're talking to a client about things that you may not have firsthand knowledge about.
Okay.
That's my mini disclaimer here, but I
Okay.
kind of usually will just take a peek at the cover sheet, kind of go through and be like, hey, the Jensen team, like they're a well-known team. They're with Red Oak Realty, which is a great company. Their disclosure package is likely going to be pretty darn complete, which is awesome. So I'm just kind of like looking for the highlights here. I always like to see that Berkeley purchase agreement addendum, or whatever is the area specific purchase agreement addendum. Berkeley is telling me right now, it's like, okay, Berkeley has a BASO, which is an energy ordinance. They have a sewer lateral ordinance. They have tenants' rights that are pretty strict, in Berkeley.
Rent control,
So,
right?
right control and like eviction protections and things. So it could be more difficult there than other places to get rid of tenants if need be. So that's just something to consider right off the bat. They have an MLS statement, which is just obviously from the MLS. There's tax record, the TDS, SPQ, that's normal. The FERPTA is not really necessary for a disclosure package, but it will say if the seller is a foreign or non-foreign status. And so that just means that title will have to collect some of their seller proceeds to hold for tax purposes.
So that doesn't really affect the buyer. That's more of a seller escrow situation.
Yep. I'm not really sure why it's in here, but sometimes agents include it. It is something that the buyers will have to sign off on, but it's not something that really needs to be provided upfront in a disclosure package. But we got lead-based paint, which is pretty standard. It's for homes that are built before 1978. The earthquake guide, safety guide. This is basically addressing things like the water heater being strapped, or if they know anything about the property being bolted to the foundation or any kind of earthquake things that may have been done. The agent visual inspection disclosure we'll go over closely. Looks like they got 7 pages, so there's they probably it's a triplex. That's right. So there's multiple ones. I believe that you need to do a different AVID for each unit. I'm not sure if they did that or not, but if you
I believe they did. I believe they did.
Okay, cool.
I think there was I actually felt like there was a unit missing from it because there were 2, but there's 3 units total. So I don't know what the deal with that was, but
it's possible that they weren't able to access one because of the tenant being living there, fair housing, that's also part of the offer. It's haven't actually really seen it in a disclosure package yet, but it's not a bad advisory to have, just reminding people not to discriminate for all the different protected classes. Same thing with this possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. That's also part of an offer. It's not necessarily needed to be included in a disclosure package. Not a bad idea, but not necessary. Same with the wire fraud advisory. Home fire hardening is a newer ordinance that we're seeing that's talking about fire danger. So if the home is located in a high fire zone, that would be needed to be disclosed to the buyer. Market conditions advisory is basically talking about how conditions can shift and how putting your home on the market at different times, if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, or how things can kind of transition quickly. So we're never going to say it's a perfect time to buy or sell real estate, but at the same time, it's almost always a good time to buy and sell real estate. So
Right.
that market conditions advisory kind of talks more about that. Then there's the statewide buyer and seller advisory. And that one's pretty cool. It talks about all the different issues that might be relevant to buyers and sellers, like I think it covers like Megan's Law, which is the sex offender database in there. It talks about we can pull the form in a second, but all the different things that could affect the buyers wanting to buy and the seller selling. Water conserving plumbing fixtures, carbon monoxide detector notice. That's basically saying, that the carbon monoxide detector has been installed and that there are, plumbing fixtures that should be in place. It may or may not be of the house. Let's see how old this is. 1929. So it may or may not have upgraded plumbing fixtures, which might be something that the buyers would need to upgrade with future renovations.
I know the sewer lateral for sure needs to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And I bet you they provided a bid for that, didn't they?
Yep, I think it was like 9,600.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I usually see them ranging from about 5 to about 10. Depends on, like, this is a triplex, so I think there's probably more complicated plumbing going on than a regular sewer lateral. It also could depend on if it's located on a corner or in the middle of a street, how far the clean out is. Anyway, a lot of those things kind of affect the bid. And of course, your buyers could get multiple bids if they get into contract. They actually want to do the work, see who can be the cheapest. Additional agent acknowledgement, that's just saying that there's 2 of them probably because they're a team. The Alameda County disclosures and disclaimers, that's for the whole county. Contra Costa has their own, and I believe there's one for the North Bay as well. I can't remember which one theirs falls under, but it's similar to the statewide buyer and seller advisory, but it dials into the local issues that might affect the property. We have the natural hazard report, which is going to talk about all sorts of hazards, ranging from earthquake, fault zones, to fire zones, to flood. Sometimes you'll see leaking underground storage things from old oil and gas and stuff like that. So it's like, it'll tell you if you're in these different zones and how close that property is to what could be hazardous. The prelim we'll go into, we'll look at that. Here's that plumbing bid, probably for the sewer. Then they got BPG, which is a reputable home inspection company. So they've got their full home inspection. GT Inspects is also one of the best pest inspection companies in the area. Of course, as you're guiding buyers through this, you would recommend that they get their own inspections, but it's nice to see that they've provided some reputable inspectors already for us. Looks like maybe there was some drainage work that was done. Maybe this is something to do with like permits. We'll look into that. Sump pump. Okay, cool. Mediation. Something to investigate.
I know the story behind that. Long story short, the toilets in the back units kept getting clogged. They brought in a plumber who again and again and again didn't get the job done. So after them sort of threatening to sue, they just said, okay, we'll just get it taken care of. So that's been settled since 2018.
Okay, then we got some income statements, I'm guessing for rent,
Yep.
for some of the units. This homeowner's booklet receipt is kind of like an antiquated thing that goes through all sorts of stuff like the earthquake hazards, lead-based paint, fair housing, mold. It used to be an actual physical booklet, but now I think they have it as a PDF or a link. We have some leases and then the verification of property. This is what will be done by you and the buyers at the end of escrow. Also doesn't belong in the disclosure package. So it doesn't hurt, but it's not relevant. So let's run through some of these things. We got a great packet to go through here. The PED all is our new PED form. That'll happen by all your buyers, you. If you meet an appraiser at the property, they should sign this. Literally anyone that goes into the property should have a signed version of this on hand. And then they were smart and they included the BPPPP form with it, which is great because you're signing for receipt of it here, but it doesn't actually come with this form. So anyway, good job on them for this. So don't have COVID, don't touch anything, but you're allowed to go in homes, which is great. Here's our Berkeley purchase agreement addendum. So when you submit this offer, you're going to put a date here. You're going to put your buyer's information here, and you're going to submit this with the offer.
Okay.
So they've already checked that they would like the responsibility of this sewer lateral to be passed on to the buyers. So it's not in compliance. They've checked for it to be made after close of escrow. So the buyer is going to need to submit a mandatory deposit with the city of Berkeley, which will get paid back to that buyer after close of escrow, after they've done that work.
And so to clarify that, those funds are not applied to the work. Those funds are held aside. The work is paid for separately, and then it's refunded. Because the reason why, because the only reason why I feel like that wouldn't be the case is it says later on, it says that they would be, any remaining funds would be paid back to them. So I'm not sure where they would be siphoning the funds if that were the case.
Yeah, so basically they just hold it as a deposit of $4,500 and then you get that money back after you've completed that work.
Okay.
Yeah, they're holding it hostage to make sure that you actually do your work like you're supposed to, and then they'll give it back to you. Okay, then there's this seismic transfer tax thing that I feel like there's not really like a lot of money left in this fund, but if the buyer was to do upgrades for the like earthquake retrofitting, they could apply for a credit that would be given to the buyers. But again, like I don't know very many successful people that have actually gotten that credit because there's not a lot of money left in this account.
So, but the 1.5 transfer tax is mandatory regardless.
Yes.
Okay, so and that's coming out of the buyer.
Yes. Well, city transfer tax for Berkeley is split between buyer and seller customarily. So county is usually the seller paying it, and then for Berkeley, the city transfer tax is usually split 50-50 between the buyer and the seller.
Okay, so the county tax buyer pays, Berkeley pays, the Berkeley one is split.
Yes.
Okay, let me quickly make a note of that.
Yeah, that's like on one of those who pays what forms. I'm sure you've seen people post about that. It's just basically what's customary. Everything's negotiable, but we usually for Berkeley it's split.
Okay, let me make, okay.
Yeah, good thing to note.
Yeah.
Then we have the Building Energy Savings Ordinance, or BESO, and this is trying to get every property as green as it can be. So this is a Berkeley specific ordinance that's trying to get, you know, our older housing inventory up to snuff with solar panels and what is that, like reinforced heating and energy efficient anything. Same with those plumbing fixtures again. So anything that they can do to get it greener. And you're allowed to defer this, I think, once, and then once it's the buyer's property, they need to get this stuff. So they deferred it to the buyer for this time, but I think if the buyer wants to sell, they're going to have to do some of these energy upgrades. They can read more about that there. Same back to this water conserving plumbing fixtures. So they want to make sure that we're not wasting water here. And it looks like they,
here's what's interesting is that it says seller responsible here, but when we go to the, pulling it up, when we go to the, in one of the documents, it says buyer's responsible. And so this was a point, I'm assuming this is a question I would ask the listing agent, but
yeah,
it does seem a little confusing there.
Okay, yeah, they're saying that the seller has either completed the retrofitting and they're compliant prior to close of escrow, or the seller shall pay to retrofit all the non-compliant water conserving fixtures with compliant fixtures. So yeah, usually this gets passed on to the buyer because it kind of makes sense unless the seller actually did all these upgrades.
Right.
So, pool, we can usually leave blank because there's very few pool, but it's talking about like trying to make sure that it's, safe, safe for kids and safe for everyone. Permit work. So this is just basically another kind of place where it's talking about, permitting, designating who's responsible for it, and that, they might go back and find out that some of these retrofits need to have some permit work, like going back to get everything into compliance. This is new to me. No smoking in multi-unit residences. Okay. I knew that this had passed, but I didn't realize it was in this addendum. Look at me learning something new.
It's pretty simple. I mean, my understanding of it is that you're not allowed to smoke in any of your units or common area, with the exception of marijuana, and that you can, a complaint can be made, and then if 2 more complaints are made, I think within 6 months or so, then they can be,
Like
then
a fine or ticket.
Exactly, in a 6-month period, yeah.
Okay, yeah, like at medical cannabis. Okay. And
then that part is added to the lease, the clause.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, these are all great resources to check out, for your clients to check out, for yourself. Everybody should be looking into these different fun city resources.
And so now, with respect to the seismic retrofit, is it mandatory for them to do the seismic retrofit, or is it just if you do the seismic retrofit, you get this tax credit?
It's if you do it, you get the tax credit. So it's like allocating who gets that credit.
Right. And my understanding is it's only up to 1/3. You only get a credit for up to 1/3 of whatever that 1.5% was.
Yeah, or half of that 1.5, right? If they're splitting it 50-50.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that part. That's good to know.
Well, because they're splitting that transfer tax, that's the transfer tax 50-50.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
So they would only be getting half of that amount. Anyway. Yeah, so it's not a lot of money, but hey, it's something, if maybe. Okay, this is just the MLS sheet. So your buyers will eventually sign receipt of this. And it's a nice little clue to somebody reviewing this that there's 2 tenants and that 1 is vacant right now. So that's just good to kind of be aware of.
And now I'm showing my green here, but scroll back up where it says the sign. Is this going to be is that done at escrow, or is it required for them to sign that for the offer?
They will be signing this as part of the disclosure package. So sometimes agents sign all the disclosures up front before you even get into contract, which I feel is a little bit of overkill and overwork. But usually if you're doing it's within your contingency period, your inspection contingency period, I should say, that they would need to sign all of these documents and return them. And usually your transaction coordinator will help out with that, but you want to have gone through all this information with your client ahead of time. So
Right. I was just
they
trying to
don't,
go ahead.
sorry, they don't have to sign it now, but they will eventually sign it. And usually that's within their inspection contingency window.
And in the case, say if they waive their inspection contingency.
Then the sooner the better after they get it accepted.
Copy that. Okay.
Yeah. But there's practicality, people need time to review things and get it all dialed in.
Right.
But if you were to be the most technical, you would want to have that signed off with your contingent free offer.
Okay.
In practicality, it's more like soon after you get an accepted offer, like the TC will handle signing it all off.
Right.
So go ahead.
So when submitting the offer, it would be proof of funds. It would be the pre-approval letter. It would be the purchase agreement, the directly purchase agreement, and then the offer, the RPA itself.
Yep.
Okay.
So I posted this cute little cheat sheet here in my Oracle update so that you can have this at your every time. So
copy that.
This will help you when you're ready for that part. I'll tag you right now. And this is good for anybody watching this. You can search in here. What goes into an offer packet? Back to here. Okay, so tax record, same thing. They're just going to sign receipt of this. They don't really need to pay attention. You as an agent, you'll see who the actual seller is. So you can add that to your offer. So you have the seller of record on there. You can kind of see the history. You can see the taxes. I don't think it'll show if they're unpaid or not on here, but it's a nice overview of the property and what you're dealing with. And then the fact that this is a triplex means that you're going to use a different contract than the regular RPA. You're going to use a residential income purchase agreement because it's for multi-units.
Very good.
Yeah. Here's the real estate transfer disclosure statement, also known as the TDS. This is a big disclosure from the sellers that should be as much as they can possibly disclose about their property. They did a good job with this one. Something for you to consider as an agent. You just want to look and see if any of the yes answers require an answer. So they can't just check yes and then not provide an explanation. Right. And so you kind of want to scan through and be like, okay, are there any defects? They're saying yes. They've checked the things that are defects. They're going to explain it for us a little bit further down. Same thing with all these yeses, any of these problems. So they've had flooding issues. They've had noise issues. They've had abatement issues. They're being very transparent here, which is a good sign. It's sometimes a little bit of a mixed blessing, but you want them to be as transparent as possible so that you and your buyer have as much information as you could have to make the right call for your buyers.
Right.
So, just reading through, seeing, okay, yeah, they have shared walls, fences, driveways. They have encroachment easements. They have, what else here? What am I missing? It looks like the lawsuit. I'm guessing that's probably the.
Yeah. They explain it later too.
The plumbing. Yeah. So great stuff. Something to keep in mind here, this TDS, the listing agent visual inspection is actually part of this form. So you need to make sure as a listing agent, when you have your listing, that you always complete this form and have it in your disclosure package ready to go. It's actually what makes this form completely done. So kind of read through, this is a lot.
Yeah, you don't have to go through all that. I actually know that stuff pretty well.
Cool.
I figured this was going to be, of all the things you could circle of crucial ordinance, this is the top of the list.
Yep, very top. And actually they did a good job of explaining things and kind of taking their time to address everything.
Yep.
Here. So then we've got basically that form again, but
Very
there's some
transparent.
different, yeah, there's some different questions on here. And the reason they do it is because they're trying to get these sellers to really be as transparent as they can. And if you ask them a couple of different times, maybe something will jog their memory on it. So yeah, like this one, like the death on a property can be a big deal to people.
Mhm.
Occasional train noise, residential industrial area. We've got some, property was built before 78, which is about lead-based paint. We'll talk about that in a second. On and on. Was there anything on here that struck out to you that you had questions about, or you're just
The only thing that really stood out to me, nothing I have questions on for you, more of anything for the listing agent.
okay?
Again, this is like when I was breaking out my disclosure summary that I was creating, I just sort of weeded out all the no answers and just put in everything they did say yes to. And so I've come through this thing pretty well.
Okay.
The only questions I really have would be for the realtor. Yeah, the only thing that kind of scares me, and let me ask you like jurisdiction on this. So one of the questions is actually scroll up if you don't mind. It'll be the last set of questions, I believe.
In here or
No, the actual questions themselves.
oh, okay.
So that would be,
In here.
the 16.
Okay.
Actually, that's perfect. Perfect right there.
Okay.
So for 16A, for example, contemplated eminent domain, condemnation, annexation, et cetera, et cetera. In their answer, they say, for sure there's rent control. Anything else with respect to, any plans that the city has for this parcel, look up on your own. Is this something that agents are chasing? Like, how deep down the rabbit hole do the buyer's agents go with this type of stuff?
Well, it's always technically your buyers that are the ones that are doing this investigating. It's not us as agents. However, we're guiding them. So I'm just making that making
No,
that
yeah,
clear.
totally.
But
Totally.
yeah, we only have so much control. It's like it's good to stay up on current events and anything that you think is coming. Like they're finally gonna put those roundabouts in at Gilman, that really dangerous turn off the freeway. And so that's like a new thing that I kind of know about. And it's like something that could affect the value and the safety of that area off Berkeley. But as far as this goes, like they're only supposed to be providing what they actually know about. And the same thing for you as a buyer's agent. And if your buyers want to investigate it further with the city or government or whatever, then there's resources for them to do it. But I'd say like kind of surface level, like nobody is doing a huge deep dive into it unless there's something that they have been aware of, like, okay, now they're going to build a freeway going through the middle of this area in the next 5 years.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Because honestly, that's been the biggest thing that I've been grappling with going through these disclosures, because I'm trying to figure out like how deep down the rabbit hole do I go for everybody? Like, because obviously like my instinct is, and it's a good instinct, is to be as helpful as humanly possible. Now, this is the first offer that, knock on wood, I would be a part of. And so, I've got, with that being said, that means that I've got a lot of time. I don't have 3 offers that I'm sending in tomorrow. So I have the luxury now. But I guess my question is like, where's the jurisdiction between, when it's reasonable for an agent to say, the ball's in your court on this one?
That's a really tough judgment call. Like, as you see more and more of these, you're going to get more familiar with what the red flags are, and you're going to have a better gut sense of what needs to be investigated. And you're also going to have those tough conversations with your buyer and figure out what's really important to them. sometimes they don't care at all about some of these things. And they're like, yeah, whatever, there was a death. I don't care, or like, yeah, there's going to be new bonds and taxes and stuff, but that's the price I pay for living in Berkeley, or,
Sure.
and then there's going to be some that are like, oh my God, I have to pay what? So,
Yeah, because look, for most of this stuff, it's like, hey, yeah, like, rent control, duh, like that's built into the DNA of a lot of Berkeley properties, and like, but obviously it's a different story when contemplated eminent domain being checked yes is like, crap, like what, you know, eh, how deep do I go to figure this out?
exactly. And I think that these sellers are being, more cautious than they could be. Like most of the time you'll see this as a no answer, but they're trying to, it's anything that they have knowledge about. So if they even think it, then they're going to they should be putting a yes answer and trying to explain themselves. But
Right.
that
Yeah.
can trigger something that's maybe not even a big deal at all, but but they're trying to cover themselves by saying yes, like we're providing information about that.
Right.
um
Yeah. I think that'll be a question I have with the listing agent. But like what I did see is that their explanation for all of the yeses here were all pretty much the same, which is that Berkeley has rent control and
mhm,
and anything else that might be happening, we don't know of anything, but you want to check it out. So
exactly, which you'll see a lot of.
yeah,
Everyone's trying to protect themselves, cover themselves, and provide information to the buyer, but also on the buy side it's like information overload.
right,
And then they're looking to you like, wait, Patrick, what's important? And you're like, wait, but
right,
you're the one that's supposed to be deciding what's important. So it's like we're all pointing pointing the finger at each other basically. So
right, right. And it's also a unique situation because the window to view the back income units is between 4 and 6 p.m. today, and then offers are due tomorrow.
I
And so
saw that.
yeah, so
Yeah.
technically they haven't even expressed to me, yes, we're 100% going to submit an offer. But what they've told me is if we can get a clear answer on the tenant maybe suing situation, then we may be compelled to write an offer. And that was good enough for me to say, okay, I better get going.
Mm-hmm. The tenant suing about what?
The tenant almost suing about the toilets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I called the listing agent. He said this has been squashed since 2018, and the toilets have been fine since. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
that's
Old news, but it's still in there because
relevant, correct.
yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's that one. Like I said, these two don't really need to be in there, but one for each.
And just to clarify it, because I think you're right. Like this is typically something that you sign at escrow, but like isn't necessarily like mission critical for the disclosure packet.
Yeah.
So for 2E, I believe if I'm reading this right, that is saying that they are not a U.S. citizen.
Not a non-resident.
Oh, not a non-resident. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So they're a resident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
So they're good. And like even if they were to actually fill out this form properly, they should be providing their social, which they should not put on this.
Right. I think it's split the difference. I think they
That's
said
why I'm like,
I'm a citizen, but I'm not going to give you my social security number right now.
yeah. So it's just kind of weird. But it is showing that there are two sellers. So that's just like more information. There's Constance and Grace. Lead-based paint. This is the pre-1978. It really has to do a lot with like lead exposure for children, and it's super common. It'll be common. They did a soils test. They would probably find lead in the soil nearby the house. And then this newer 2010, oh my God, I'm getting so old. Newer lead-based paint renovation repair rule is talking about how you're not supposed to just scrape all this paint off into the ether. You're supposed to put, guides in place so that you can trap that from just going out into the dirt and to the air and everything.
Correct.
You're supposed to do it, per these regulations. So they're talking about, yeah, we did paint and there might be lead-based paint. So that's basically that. It's this fun fact, this should be included as part of the purchase agreement addenda or purchase agreement. It's actually supposed to be submitted with your offer, but no one does it. So it's just a fun for me fact, I suppose.
And
Uh,
is that note in the Slack memo about submitting offers?
that the FLD, the sled-based paint form is included?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because it would throw people off. They'd be like, why are you including this random, like, it's a
Got
very
it.
little known obscure fact that this is supposed to be included
Got
with
it.
your offer, but I should stop saying it because it just confuses more people than not. This is what I was talking about, the earthquake risk disclosure statement. So they're talking about if it's been bolted to the foundation. They said no. They don't know about their water heater being braced, which is really important and will be important for the appraisal. That's something that they will check. So you want to, it might even say on the home inspection if
Yeah.
it's been braced.
And if the water heater isn't braced, does that make the home non-lendable?
They will require it before they'll give you the appraisal. They won't give you your appraisal back until it's been braced. So they'll have to go back out and check it again.
And would that be on the buyer?
On the seller.
On seller. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But it probably is braced. They probably just, I don't know why they checked, don't know. Maybe they didn't understand the question.
Right.
Or they didn't want to like guarantee that it wouldn't fall in an earthquake, but
Right. Might be good enough for an appraiser, which for now will count.
Yeah. So we've got
A lot of don't
crawl
know.
space, a lot of don't knows, like it's talking about foundation, reinforced masonry, if it's on a hillside, it's not on a hillside, so they put doesn't apply. Just basically whatever, only to the seller's knowledge. This is not the agent, this is not the home inspector, this is just what Grace and Constance think about their bracing, what they recall about their foundation, and if they're in any kind of earthquake zones, they're referring to the natural hazard statement.
And another granular question here. So say a buyer says, okay, we're trying to compete in this hot market, and we have decided personally that we will waive all our contingencies. If, say, the situation comes where you get into contract and the appraiser says, I'm not getting this appraisal back to you until this water heater is braced, the seller would still have to cover it. They don't get to say, hey, you waived all your contingencies, you got to pay for it now, right?
Not necessarily. So you would have to kind of negotiate that out with the seller to say like, well, we can't get a loan without this, and you want us to buy this house. You would it's not cut and dry. It would be a conversation.
Right. And are these kinks that you sometimes run into after you get into contract, or is this stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes, it's common.
Okay. And then
Especially since we're moving way too fast and we don't have enough inspection contingencies and everyone's at a breakneck speed to close escrow. However, I see a lot of appraisers being kind of flexible on this stuff too, and like being like, okay, well, I'll provide the appraisal, but somebody needs to take care of this kind of.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't want to, have my tail between my legs because I didn't put this on the offer, on the RPA up front or the RIPA up front. And then it's like a gotcha moment where it's like, oh, well, the water heater's not braced. We can't even get a loan on this. And then I was just trying to make sure that I'm not.
And something like that, it's like, I don't know, like maybe $100 fix, to have somebody like go out there and strap it. It's like you're paying for their time and for these like little metal brackets to be installed. Like most of the time the agents would figure that out.
Okay.
Like if it was going to become a deal killer over a really simple fix, sometimes you guys will just take care of it because
it's my first offer, so I'm just trying to make sure there's nothing that makes my heart drop and my client's pissed. So
well, I can't protect you from that. But you're asking great questions and you're doing a good job of investigating. So, but yeah, unfortunately that comes with the territory.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, here's their Avid. So they did one for 21-24 first. And so you're just kind of looking through, and this is, good. This nothing to note thing kind of bothers me. You should always try and find something to note. So it shows that you've actually gone in there. But
Sure.
looks thorough. Otherwise, little sloping, worn, some holes. These agent visual inspection disclosures are really for the agent. This is what will protect you if there's a lawsuit in the future where the buyer says, you didn't tell me XYZ. You can say, yep, it's here, it's in writing. This is something that you as an agent, you'll walk through the entire property, making your own notes for everything from it was on a busy street to I heard the neighbor's dog to I see a crack in the foundation to the grout is dirty in the bathroom to I heard the sink dripping, whatever. It's what you can visually inspect. You're not crawling in crawl spaces, you're not going up in attics, you're not a home inspector, but you should have a pretty detailed accounting of what you've seen.
Right. And that's,
Hence-
is that why you put an emphasis on you should put something down instead of
Yeah.
nothing? Because this is a CYA document.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big one. So ideally you'll be there taking notes. Glide has a cool feature where you can like add pictures and stuff to your disclosures. Just be as detailed as you can, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, as much as you can. And this is a good one. You went through, did a good job.
Yeah, and then you'll see, so that was 21, 24, this is 21, 28, and then that's it. So I think you're right. I think it was probably just a situation in which they weren't able to get access to the other unit. Because it's not even a situation where they show one bed, one bath under 21, 28, and then another one bed, one bath under 20. It's just only one unit. So I have to believe that's just because of the fact they couldn't get the unit.
Yep. This is our fair housing advisory. This was part of the offer, like I said earlier, just talking about different ways that people can be discriminatory, whether they're explicitly or implicitly being biased against people, kind of going over some really important words like channeling, steering, blockbusting. These are all, nice key vocabulary words to be familiar with as agents. This is they do have a little blurb about love letters somewhere in here, talking about how, I think it's this one. Yeah, personal information and love letters from buyer, especially with photos. It's used to be a really key fundamental way to make their offer stand out. And now we can't really do that because people have these biases. And again, I feel like if people are going to discriminate, they're going to discriminate whether we have an advisory or not, but at least this brings awareness to the whole thing.
Right.
It's a step in the right direction. What else? This is just disclosure. Again, not really necessary for your disclosure package, but talking about how brokers can work with multiple buyers, sellers, or sometimes represent the buyer and the seller at the same time. And that this part is really important. Offers are not necessarily confidential. It's very common in our area for the agents to hold that number close to the vest and not disclose the terms and the offer amount of competing offers. That's just what's customary here. Legally, they are allowed to disclose that amount. There's a special form that's also not commonly used about a confidentiality agreement. But without that signed, they can technically say what this offer that your client, Patrick, is writing at and try and leverage that to get somebody to write a higher offer.
Right.
So we don't need to belabor that point, but it's just nice for them to know that it's not necessarily, a confidential thing. What else? Wire fraud. What was that, Patrick?
I said this is key. Getting this communicated because it's crazy.
Yeah. So wire fraud is real. We've seen clients almost lose $1 million before. It's It's important to note for your buyers, you don't want them to be too freaked out, but that they need to make sure whenever they're transferring money that they call the escrow officer, make sure that they have the, the numbers correct, and then the amount before they transfer the money, because fraudsters will intercept and take their money.
And another moment where I may be showing my green. The clients themselves are interfacing with the escrow officers, right?
Yes.
I'm not the liaison. They're just going straight to, it's akin to the relationship with the lender. I can maybe call and ask questions, but this is when they're sending these funds, this is the client working with escrow and their lender.
Yes. So what you'll send when you get into escrow is an email that has the escrow's contact information, your client's contact information, and you're going to say, hey, Deanna, please reach out to my clients, Mr. and Mrs. blah, blah, and we're, coordinate for their earnest money deposit in the amount of $33,124 due
Right.
within 3 business days of acceptance. And that way your clients are like, okay, cool. I know I got to get this in. I know the amount, and I know that Deanna is going to help me. And then the escrow officers are great at just taking it from there. They know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they'll make sure that.
I worked a lot. I actually think I worked with the Deanna you might be talking about when I was doing commercial lending.
Yeah, she's fabulous.
She's awesome.
So this is the fire zone. If it's in a high fire zone, this is the new disclosure around letting people know that. I don't think that it's a required form, but they've got it in here kind of as like a reminder to everyone about fire zones. Market conditions, I talked about that a tiny bit earlier about how, markets shift and non-contingent offers. This is one more time where they're advising people about all their different contingencies and how important they are.
Mm-hmm.
What else? This is the statewide buyer and seller advisory, talking about what the seller is supposed to be doing, what the broker is supposed to be doing, buyer is supposed to be doing. And then it's nice because it gives you a nice little breakdown of all the different places where you can find information about this. So like death on the property, arbitration, electronic signatures, you can kind of go through instead of, obviously people should read through all this stuff too, but we may not care so much about formaldehyde. We may not care about, but we might care about mold. We might care about pets and animals. And so you can kind of read through all this stuff, but it's permit information. What else? What else is in here? I think there's something about meth labs, marijuana. Yeah, there we go. I don't think they should be lumped together like that because meth labs are arguably a lot more dangerous than grow houses, but they could cause mold, fungus issues as well. Talking about title insurance and how important it is to have title insurance. Rent eviction control laws and ordinances, which we know Berkeley is strong on. Retrofitting, we talked about a little bit. Yeah. So there's 18 pages of this.
Right.
Or 14 pages of this, talking about all these different potential issues for people. This is where it talks about FERPTA. That was that form that I said I didn't think was really necessary. Talking about how they'll hold 15% of the purchase price in escrow for taxes. Again, doesn't really affect the buyer, but something to be aware of. Here's your Megan's Law disclosure. Supplemental tax bills, not the best at explaining this, but basically there's a difference between your regular tax bill and then the difference of what the home is currently paying taxes on that value versus what the new assessed value will be. And there will be a supplemental bill that comes randomly that will be that difference, that amount. And so they need to be aware of it. I don't have the exact number. There's a calculator for how to figure it out in the in the natural hazard report. We'll see soon.
Mm-hmm.
But they really do need to be aware of the fact that there's going to be another tax bill coming. Title can explain it better too. What else? Got arbitration, escrow funds, home warranties, liquidated damages, mediation. This is pretty close to what they're going to be signing for in the purchase contract. But basically that 3% of their purchase price is on the line if they default on the contract without contingencies in place,
Mhm.
and that they need to do mediation first before they go straight for suing, mediation between both parties happens. If there's a dispute, homeowners association stuff, that will be a different call. There's a lot to cover with HOAs, but PACE loans, that's like, we'll see that sometimes happen with solar panels on properties. These loans stay with the property, like act as a lien on that property. Rekeying, obviously, as soon as they buy, they should get their home rekeyed as fast as possible. And many of the home warranties include this as part of their service. So do that. That's about it for the SBSA. I'm sure there'll be another 3 pages they add to that next update. Water conserving fixtures, we talked a little bit about already, but basically saying that they're important and that they're going to eventually need to be upgraded to that for all properties. Carbon monoxide detectors. This has been a state law since 2011 that all homes need to have these carbon monoxide detectors installed, and they need to be outside the dwelling units, so sleeping units, basically bedrooms is how I read that. And if you're meeting an appraiser at the property, I often will carry carbon monoxide detectors on me, because that's another thing. Just like the water heater, the carbon monoxide detectors are just as important. So they won't give you your appraisal until both of those things have been taken care of. So I keep 9 volts and carbon monoxide detectors just for that reason, in case.
And then do you get refunded, or are you just like, it's on the house, whatever?
Just on the house. Like, it's just something you should keep in your realtor kit.
Going, right?
Yeah, just take care of business. It's a small amount to pay. You could ask the seller to take, in the contract, you're going to specify that the seller provide that, because it should already be there. But in reality, you're going to keep those in your car just in case you need them to help your buyers out. It's like learning how to drive, right? We learn the rules and regulations, and then there's the actual practical, how do you do real estate?
Right, so. Exactly.
This is just a Red Oak disclosure about square footage. Square footage is, I think, the number 2 reason that agents get sued. Talking about how big things are. And so you got to be really careful. And when you have a listing, it's ideal that you use the tax records unless you have a measured appraisal that you can defer to. So there's just, basically, this is a CYA form for Red Oak, saying that this is what they believe the square footage to be, but they are not guaranteeing it in any way, shape, or form.
Got it.
So that's that. This is redundant because
this is where remember when I was saying how it said sellers taking care of it before? This is the form that says the buyer's responsible.
Yep.
So that's a question for the listing agent, but
definitely their TC probably messed up and checked the wrong box.
Yeah,
is probably what happened here on either one, but it's good to get clarification.
Figure out which one, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's kind of silly to have yet another form about this in here, but that's that. And then Tamir and Leif are the agents. This is redundant to the statewide buyer and seller advisory, but it does dive deeper into area specific disclosures and advisories. So market conditions basically repeats that market conditions form. Housing stock, tempered glass, fireplaces. So sometimes we'll spare the air days. You may not always be able to use your fireplace. They got to throw square footage in there one more time because it's a high reason that people get sued. They're saying we don't, nobody's going to verify this except for trained professionals. Fence maintenance. So sometimes you think you know where the boundary is, but you don't, because the fence could be on the wrong line. And the only way to truly know is with a surveyor. So something to consider. A lot of the time it'll show up on the prelim if there's an easement or something, but the property boundary lines are not always what you think they might be. Trees, there's some protected trees, view ordinances, so they don't want your trees to get completely overgrown. This river, creek, and levee protection thing is actually kind of important in Berkeley. There's a lot of streams from the Berkeley Hills that run through Berkeley. There's creeks and culverts, and they're protected. There is a Berkeley Creek map. That'll show, it's kind of like a whole rabbit hole, but
Yeah,
there are
in the disclosure as well.
Yeah, they didn't say anything about it. Did they say anything about the creeks? Not really, not specifically. Yeah, so there is a way to look it up online to see which creeks are running through the area, and it can affect, if there is one underneath that property or nearby, it can affect whether or not you can expand or rebuild, or if that creek changes. And the open creeks are just what you would imagine. And the culverted creeks are the ones that are actually like housed in concrete, that are offsetting water lines from the top of the mountains all the way down to the bay. So I should probably have a whole class on Berkeley creeks, but I'm presuming that this one in the flatlands is not probably a high risk of that, but because it's like almost to the bay, but the ones, especially in the mountain, like the Berkeley Hills, it can get pretty dicey about where these creeks are and if they're running through the middle of a property. So obviously we know about fire, underground storage tanks. That's what I was talking about earlier, about having like these toxic materials that have been left behind in these tanks. And there's a surprising amount of them in our area. It's kind of creepy, but most of the time not a big deal because they're just stuck under the soil and we kind of ignore that they're there. But some people really do care about that stuff and some don't. Again, condos, HOA stuff, we'll talk about on a different fun time. Insurance claims, it's good for the buyers to start as soon as they get into escrow, researching about insurance companies. So usually they'll go with whoever their car insurance company is, but it's good to get some different quotes and also to see if there have been any recent insurance claims made against the property. Because if there's like an outstanding one for, let's say, theft or fire damage or whatever, and if the seller didn't disclose that, or if it affects the ability for the buyers to get insurance on that property and they need their insurance to get that loan, you want to find that out as soon as possible, because you may need to cancel if the home can't be insured, or if it's going to be an outrageous amount of money to get the home insured.
Right. And I would be able to likely just find the insurance receipts in that bundle. If that was, as long as the home has been previously insured, it should still continue to be insurable, correct?
Not necessarily. So that person that, they base the homeowner's insurance off of the person requesting it and the property. Okay. So it's pretty common that you can get a home insurance, but with especially places in high fire zones, they have made it really cost prohibitive to get home insurance. And, I think there's been lawsuits involved in that kind of thing as well. And the Berkeley Hills and the Oakland Hills have had some issues with this, like this issue, because they're on these narrow streets, you know, and high fire zones and stuff, and the homeowners insurances are dropping them, not wanting to insure them anymore. So
Oh,
yeah. But I think for this property in this case, we're fine. Privacy, like we can't control once the home's out on the internet, it's out on the internet. But people get freaked out about that. So it's good for them to be aware of. Deal with probate sales another day, smoke alarms, belabored water heaters. Animals, sometimes people, you know, don't want to live in a place that has had animals for their allergies, or there could be dangerous animals in the wild that are nearby. What else? So many different advisories. I'm just like kind of skimming at this point, but these are all important.
1 second. I need to quickly identify something real quick for my clients.
This is fun. Garage door safety requirements. In addition to existing safety standards, automatic reversing device standards, all new automatic garage doors sold or installed in California must have a battery operated backup system. Good to know.
Just gotta send a picture of this real quick. Okay. And a mark of this piece right here. And I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay, it's all good.
A little misunderstanding about when the open house was for them.
Okay. We got fair housing again. There could be restrictions on short-term rentals, new construction. Sometimes there's defects and people need to sue about that. What is this advisory about marijuana? Saying it's like legal, but not really, but kind of it is. There's some noise from, you know, bark pretty much anywhere in the bay. Let's see here. Flood benefit assessment. It's pretty cool because each of these things, like even if you don't know anything about it, like it gives you a nice little blurb and then usually a resource to find more information on. Sewer lateral stuff like comes up a lot. We talked about their bid. I think it's a little further in the packet. Sidewalk repair program. I think, yeah. Berkeley, Oakland has an ordinance, but Berkeley hasn't done that yet with passing it to the buyer or seller.
Oh, so Berkeley doesn't have a sidewalk ordinance yet?
Not yet. Nope.
Okay, so I don't have to.
Oakland, yeah, Oakland is the only one right now that I know of.
Oh, for some reason I thought it was Alameda County passed it for the whole county.
Nope, only Oakland for now.
Yeah.
Talked about smoke already, soft story. So anytime a home is built where it's like on an open, like say a home built over a garage, that's a soft story. And so it could be higher risk of damage in earthquakes. So sometimes they'll require that gets fixed to protect people. Gas shutoff valves, they really want that to be installed. I think the city of Alameda and maybe some other spots in Contra Costa have these specific gas shutoff valve ordinances. We're going to do a workshop on that actually to figure out exactly which ones and when, but I don't think Berkeley has that. Bedrooms, talking about sewer lateral again. These are all Berkeley sidewalk repair program. They split the cost with homeowners 50-50. That's cool. Better than Oakland's. But again, it's not a point of sale ordinance yet. It's
Okay.
just something that they do. Meadowbrook is a specific area, talking about Oakland City, on and on. And then it gives us tons of resources on how to. One more time without water fraud.
Yep.
We should have disclosure bingo. How many
Yeah,
times
exactly. I like that actually.
repeats itself. But these are the hazard maps. I shouldn't just scroll over it. It shows where they are. You got a nice little key, so it'll show you, how close they are. Like this, blue cross hatching is like they're just outside that zone.
Yeah.
So and still pretty close, but not quite in the zone. Same thing here with those lusks, those leaking underground storage tanks are basically right all around this property. If you can see here. So that's not great, but again, as you can see, like they are kind of everywhere, and this is just a cross section, right? They're just dialing in on this one specific location. It'd be nice if they gave context, like showed all the areas of it, but so people could see how common it is. This is a nice little summary of everything. So it's like, nope, it's not a special flood hazard area of potential flooding. However, we saw on the map, like you're just barely outside of it. So you're not in it, you're not in an earthquake zone, or it says yes to this liquefaction zone. So liquefaction is when the ground turns into liquid if there's an earthquake. And like if that happens in San Francisco, pretty much all of San Francisco will get, annihilated. And
Not
so because there's not bedrock underneath it. There's not, it just turns to liquid. There's not enough stability, let's say.
Right.
So it's saying that it is in a like low liquefaction susceptibility rating. So it's like it's in it pursuant to this, but then it's saying that it's in the mapped area with low liquefaction susceptibility rating. So it's like a little bit confusing, but it's in the liquefaction zone, but it's not that susceptible to it. Not as bad as it could be, I guess, is what we'll say.
Right.
And then otherwise, it's not in any other, it's in a commercial industrial area. It's in the Energy Commission area, which is a climate zone where properties are usually subject to duct sealing testing requirements. Guessing that's more so for the commercial stuff, but this is like sort of the Gilman district, Patrick.
To be honest with you, I am not sure.
It's like, no, it's not Gilman.
It's called Ocean View.
Okay, cool. Just curious. So yeah, then it talks about all these different hazards again that we just kind of covered from all the rest of those advisories, and it'll break down every single one of them for you. So if it was in a special flood zone, and there's 53 pages of these. And then I think the only thing that I'll point out in here, rather than going over every single one of these, especially since this property is not really in most of them, is just to read over the leaking underground storage part and to look through the supplemental tax section. So the rest of this stuff is kind of like, it's not in, so we don't really need to worry too much about them. Farm disclosure. I don't think we're in an agriculture zone. Mining. But this is a good thing for people to read through and be like, okay, like I said, some things are going to matter more to them than others. Like this electromagnetic field advisory.
Yeah, that's interesting.
People get really stressed about that. Tsunamis, all this stuff. But they remind you periodically, like, it is or is not. So Melrose districts is a special tax for these different things. That'll be different than they lived in a different area. Sometimes, like the houses on the hill, they'll have a special tax for airlifting water up if there was a fire, or protecting, like around me in Richmond, I have a redevelopment fee for the Marina Bay beautifying and stuff like that. So it's a special tax. I pay more money to live where I live because of these benefits and bonds to the community. Yeah, so this is what they're the tax bill thing. So they can do the math on this and see, like, okay, this is what they're currently paying and what it might look like when they're actually paying for it here. At the new, the new value when they purchase. Okay, I won't go through the rest of this. It's just, those are the two big ones. Prelims. You do a whole class on prelims. I'm hoping, like, basically what I'm looking for as a buyer side, I'm looking to see who the owners are and how they hold title to make sure that, it's not a trust sale or something more complicated. And then I'm looking to see if they've paid their taxes. It'll show up on here as a lien if they didn't, which would also get handled through escrow. It doesn't get passed on to the new buyer. It gets cleared up, taken out of their proceeds. Shows like any liens in here. What is this? Basically anything that's a link, I try to click on to look and see what it is. What is this?
Boundaries of the territory within the county of Alameda proposed for annexation.
To the California Home Finance Authority. Clean energy. Might ask title for a further explanation on this. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. If you were to get into contract on it, be something to ask about. And then here's their deed of trust from their purchase. Presumably it could be their purchase or it could be a refi, but it will show their owning this property, their mortgage. And that's it. That's great. So the rest of this stuff,
The note about it being within the boundaries of the whatever, I'm assuming that's something I should probably try to get on the phone with title about, like, now, right? Before we get into contract.
yes, ideally. They may not talk to you about it because you're not in contract, and, like, you're not representing the buyer yet. So it's a little tricky sometimes, but yeah, trying to find out more information about this. What
But
are they talking about? Yeah.
We would lose the EMD if they got in a contract and saw that and said, oh wait, we don't want this anymore.
They could, yeah. If you don't have an inspection contingency, because they did mention something on the CDS or the SPQ about proposed annexation. Like they did check that box, and then they do have this random thing in the prelim where it's
does the inspection contingency envelop title?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just home.
It's everything.
Oh.
Buyer's inspection contingency is for literally everything.
Got
Protects them from changing their mind overnight, deciding it's not the right decision. Again, they don't like the neighbor's dog barking. They don't like literally everything is under that that inspection contingency.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a gut feeling about this house that it would probably not be a good idea to waive the inspection contingency.
It's complicated. Like it's a complicated house. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to investigate.
Yeah.
Let's see here. These are the property taxes that they paid. See here. Tax rate. End of notes. Then this kind of, again, with the wire fraud. And these are just the different types of boilerplate disclosures for the title companies, how they cover buyers and sellers. Like, depending on where they are, I'll let you read through that, but they're all basically the same, talking about the different coverages from the California, see if I can even remember it, California Land Title Act, CLTA. Okay, try and pick this up. We're running out of time here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is for the sewer lateral.
Perfect. Like you said, 6,900, that's good. Plumbing Ministry is a reputable company. They're just going to tell us what needs to actually get done. The buyers will pay for it. Looks like a lot. It's 2 pages of it, but that's okay. Here's our BPG. We'll go through the entire thing. I just want to see their action items. They're pretty good about only putting what's important here. Exposed rebar, so you probably want to get some foundational work done. Looks like crawl space has some moisture. Pest control, that's what they kind of, they're going to cover themselves by pointing it out that a pest person should come through, which they also have an inspection for that, which is good. Plywood, main water shutoff valve handle is missing. It's not a huge deal, but cool. Loose metal flashing for the roof, gaps. I don't know if they provided a roof inspection, but you might want to have a roof inspection or know that most likely they're going to have to do some work on their roof. Plumbing, drain pipe no longer in use. Okay, we won't worry too much about that because that would probably get covered under the sewer lateral work. So the water heater temperature relief valve lacked a discharge. They want somebody to fix that. Electrical, got some wires, double lugging, so it's not like as solid as it should be to take on the workload of for the circuit breaker. Wiring, junction box, so they might need a new junction box. So it's like a lot of little things. It's not
Right.
None of these things are like too crazy. Again, it's all relative to the buyer, like what they want to take on, but I'd say it's not too scary. So see, we did not observe carbon monoxide on the lower floor at the time of inspection. So that could potentially deal kill your appraisal. So
Right.
if you want to make sure that they get those installed, and or when you do it, somebody needs to do it. Yeah, so don't use the fireplace. That's the end of the action. So consideration, I feel like these are a lot of the time boilerplate. Like they're just trying to get you to take care of all this stuff. Like, but it's not a huge deal.
Right.
Okay. What else? I have We got the other unit. Some similar stuff. Okay. Yeah, in the ideal world, you could like get a contractor to look over this report and give some estimates on the stuff that needs to be done, or do a walkthrough with you and be like, okay, these are the things that need to get taken care of.
Is that something that would usually happen in escrow?
Yeah, during your inspection contingency, you could have, do more research into what this would actually take to get done for the buyers, to make sure that they actually want to take it on. So for this, I kind of just scroll through to the end to see how much we're looking at first. Like, and then I kind of go through and go, okay, what is this really for? Because if it's all on like a deck repair or something like that, it's like, that's not as important. But if it's all throughout the house, which it looks like it is, looks like a lot of work.
Yep.
Okay, like it's not as bad as it could be. I'd say a normal pest inspection, like for our area of 100-year-old housing inventory, it like 10K is about normal, and then 30 to 40 is like on the high side, and I've seen it all the way up to 100K.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So this is actually not that bad, even though there's a lot of stuff that needs to be taken care of throughout it. Like, only having it be 16K is pretty good, because some of this stuff you can refer out to a different contractor. You really need this pest inspection company to kill the pests, the termites, the fungus, whatever. And then you can have a contractor go through and actually do the work for cheaper, usually. So something to consider when you talk to clients, like, yeah, it's 16K, but it's probably not going to be 16K when you actually do the work. Or it could be a lot more because they missed something.
Right.
This is the other.
And you're saying contractors are able to squash a lot of this pest stuff?
So yeah, the pest inspection company, you want to have them kill the pests, and then you have a contractor go out and do like the repair work that needs to be done. So you're paying a premium for these pest control guys to do both sides of the work. Yeah. Okay, and then an additional, okay. Yeah. So not light, like, what, almost 30K.
Right.
But maybe you get that down to 20, but maybe it also goes up because there's other things that need to get done. So yeah, I'd say estimate around 30K for pest repairs. And then what is this beautiful thing?
I think that's just in reference. That's in reference to the drainage work that they had to do.
Got it.
In the front of the driveway. I think that's also when they put in the sump pump.
Okay, makes sense. They got to get rid of that water. City of Berkeley certificate. Structural pest. Is this like old pest work?
2016.
Yeah. So they did some old pest work back in the day in 2015. But it's a little concerning that they had work done and then there's still so much more to do.
Right.
Or that happened in the last 6 years.
Maybe, yeah. 2017.
Sump pump, cool. That's good just for keeping it. This is the mediation that we talked about earlier. This is their rental balance sheet. Cool. This is that earthquake hazard booklet that I won't go through. But again, it's talking about all these different hazards in detail.
Mhm.
This is the lease agreement that's still in place, right, with these tenants.
Yep.
And your clients want to live there?
They would live in the front house and then they would just retain the 2 tenants that are in the back.
Okay. Cool. That's it for the packet, I think.
Mhm. Well, yeah, Karina, I mean, I really, really, really appreciate the time. I mean, just kind of going through it myself today, I think it was just